A static noise on the radio frequency, followed by an echoing voice. "Base, help me. This isn't me." At the same time, the same voice repeats from the base of the tower. "This isn't me." Same frequency, same voice, 2 locations. This recording was processed into the systems at Camp Navajo, but the entity making this sound was not Torres. Get ready to hear the real story. The night a soldier faced his own voice. October 15, 2019, Camp Navajo, Arizona, 9:30 p.m. Night shift begins. In the middle of the Arizona desert on ancient Navajo land, Camp Navajo looked like an ordinary military storage facility from the outside. Spanning 8,000 acres, massive storage hangars and security towers stood in rows. However, the soldiers stationed there knew this land was more than just an ammunition depot. It was sacred ground to the Navajo people, who had revered it for thousands of years. Sergeant Michael Torres, as he climbed the guard tower that night, heard his grandfather's words echoing in his ears. "Miguel, some places are sacred, some are cursed. You must learn to tell the difference." Torres was the son of immigrant parents who carried the blood of the Navajo community. He had been serving in the U.S. Army for 5 years, but had only been stationed at this camp for 3 months. 3 months had been enough to understand that this region was different. Standing alone in Watchtower 7, Torres checked his radio. "Tower 7, this is base. Report." "This is Tower 7. No activity in the area. Clear skies, visibility 10 miles. But there was something Torres didn't mention in his report. For the past 3 weeks, he had been hearing strange sounds during his night shifts. At first, he thought they were wolf howls. Then he thought they might be the wind. But these sounds weren't like wolves or wind. More like the sound of voices. But they didn't resemble any known language. Torres remembered the Navajo legends he had heard from his grandfather. The legends told of creatures that walked on all fours and were called Skinwalkers in the Navajo language. Were the sounds Torres heard just his imagination? Or was there really something disturbing the sacred grounds at Camp Navajo? Torres remembered what he had heard from the old Navajo shopkeeper last week. The old man had said, "These lands," in the Navajo language, "they have been protected for a very long time. But the white man came, put up fences, and brought big machines." "What happened then?" Torres had asked. "Then, the balance was broken. The protective spirits retreated. But the dark ones, they stayed here." At the time, Torres had thought the old man was rambling. But now, standing alone in the watchtower, those words made more sense. Camp Navajo was established in 1942 during World War II. At the time, the Navajo code talkers were fighting for America, while their land was being turned into a military base. But there was an irony here, because while the Navajo were fighting for their country, their sacred land was being occupied. Torres began scanning the area with his thermal imaging device. The surroundings of Camp Navajo were the barren Arizona desert. During the day, temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius, and at night, it was freezing cold. Under normal circumstances, nocturnal animals could be seen: coyotes, jackals, and occasionally deer. But this night, there were no animals in the thermal image. Strange, Torres muttered to himself. The jackal should be out by now. He turned on his radio. Base Tower 7 here. Animal activity in the area is very low. No animals are visible on the thermal. Tower 7, this is normal. Animal activity reports have been decreasing over the past few weeks. Torres's brows furrowed. Why were the animals fleeing? What was keeping them from approaching Camp Navajo? After an hour of silence, Torres noticed something on the thermal imaging device. South of the camp, 200 meters outside the security fence, there was a heat signature. But this wasn't a normal heat signature. It was human-sized, but its shape was odd. Sometimes it looked like it was standing on 2 legs, other times on 4. Torres whispered to himself, "What is that thing doing?" He focused on the thermal image. The object was moving, but not like a normal animal. The movements were deliberate. It was as if it was examining the camp, looking for weak spots. Torres took his binoculars and tried to see with his normal vision, but he couldn't see anything in the darkness. What could this object in the thermal image be? Could Torres really be facing a Skinwalker? Torres remembered his grandfather Joseph's warnings once again. "Torres, if you don't see them, they won't see you. But once you make eye contact, they'll follow you."
"What are these things, Grandpa?" "They used to be healers, but they turned to the dark side. They sacrificed their lives for power. Now they're neither human nor animal. Something in between." "Are these stories true?" Joseph's face grew serious. "Torres, some things aren't to be joked about. Skinwalkers are real, and they still live among us." Torres had once thought these were just children's tales, but now, as he stared at the strange shape in the thermal image, his grandfather's fear made more sense. For half an hour, Torres watched the object. The entity was systematically circling the camp. It was examining the security fence, noting the locations of the watchtowers, as if conducting a tactical reconnaissance. And the most terrifying part, with every passing minute it was getting closer to the camp. At first, it was 200 meters away. Now it was circling at 150 meters. Torres decided to radio the other watchtowers. "Tower 3, this is Tower 7. Do you see anything on the south side?" "Tower 7, this is Tower 3. "Negative. Why did you ask?" "There's an odd heat signature on the thermal. It looks like an animal, but it's different. Could it be a wild boar? A few were spotted last week." Torres looked at the thermal image again. It didn't look like a wild boar. Wild boars didn't move like that. As Torres watched the presence on the thermal image, he heard a sound. At first, he thought it was the wind, but there was no wind. There was no movement in the air. The sound was coming from far away. It was a low, moaning sound. It sounded like crying, or like someone was singing, but it didn't sound like any melody he knew.
Torres took off his headphones and listened carefully. The sound was in Navajo, but it was a very old dialect. He could understand a few words he had learned from his grandfather. "Hello, beautiful peace." But the way these words were spoken was not normal. They were very muffled. It was as if the speaker had a problem with their throat. As midnight approached, Torres saw the most terrifying thing. On the thermal image, the entity approached the security fence. It was 12 feet high, made of barbed wire. No animal could pass through it. But the entity crossed the fence. Torres rubbed his eyes and reset the thermal device. But the image was clear. The entity had crossed to the other side as if the fence didn't exist. "This is impossible," Torres whispered. He immediately grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Tower 7. The southern sector fence has been breached. I repeat, perimeter breach." "Tower 7, what did you see? Which side?" "Sector 7G. There's a thermal connection, but I couldn't see how it got through." "Tower 7, stay calm. We're sending a support team. How far away is that entity?" Torres looked back at the thermal image. The entity was now inside the camp, and it was heading straight for Tower 7. "Base, they're coming. They're coming straight for me." Torres watched as the entity approached rapidly on the thermal image. 100 meters, 80 meters, 60 meters. With each step, the heat signature grew stranger. Sometimes it looked human, sometimes like a four-legged creature. It seemed to be constantly changing shape. "Base, Tower 7. The entity is 50 meters away. It's closing in fast." "Tower 7, QRT is on its way. ETA 3 minutes. Hold your position. Do not engage." But Torres knew that 3 minutes was a long time. The entity would be at the tower by then. He readied his M4 rifle, but his grandfather's words came to mind. "Bullets won't hurt them, Miguel. They'll only make them angrier." When the entity came within 20 meters of the watchtower, Torres could see it with the naked eye. At first, it looked like an old man from a Navajo tribe. He was wearing traditional clothing and walking slowly. But something was wrong. His gait wasn't normal. It was very mechanical, as if he had just learned to move, and its dimensions were constantly changing. Sometimes it was the size of a normal human, sometimes much taller, sometimes much wider. Torres put down the thermal vision device and looked through his binoculars. What he saw froze his blood. The old man's face was gone. Just empty darkness. Where his eyes should have been, there were holes. And where his mouth should have been, there was a black void. The most terrifying moment occurred then. The entity began to speak to Torres. At first, it made sounds in the Navajo language, but then it began to mimic Torres's own voice. "Base Tower 7, entity 50 meters away." It was the exact same words Torres had spoken half a minute earlier, but the tone of voice was different, deeper, more terrifying. "It's approaching quickly!" The entity was perfectly mimicking Torres's radio transmissions. It sounded as if his voice had been recorded onto a tape and altered. Torres opened his radio. "Base, base, it's not me. It's mimicking my voice. Tower 7, what are you saying? We don't understand you. At that moment, Torres's own voice came from below. It's not me. He's mimicking my voice. The operator at base was confused. Tower 7, which one of you is real? We're hearing two different voices. Are you mocking us? As the entity approached the base of the watchtower, voices began to echo in Torres's head. His grandfather's voice. Miguel, run. Run now. His mother's voice. Son, come down. I'll take you home. His deceased brother's voice. Mike, come with me. I'm so alone. Torres covered his ears. This isn't real. This isn't real. But the voices grew louder. Now it wasn't just familiar voices. His own thoughts were mixed in. Jump down. But I'm afraid of heights. I've always been afraid of heights. Turn the gun on yourself and shoot. It'll be much easier. Let go. Stop fighting. Torres gripped his M4 tightly. No. I'm Sergeant Torres. This is my duty. I can't do this. When Torres looked down, he saw the creature's true form. It no longer looked like an old man. Now, it resembled something indefinable. It was human-sized, but extremely thin. It had long, thin arms. Its head was very large, but its facial features were constantly changing. Sometimes it looked like a dog's head, sometimes like a deer's head, and sometimes like strange shapes that didn't resemble any animal. The most terrifying part, its eyes. Human eyes, but extremely bright. Bright enough to illuminate the darkness around it. And the creature began climbing the stairs of the watchtower. Base! Base! I'm under attack in the tower. Help! Send reinforcements. Tower 7, the QRT team is 1 minute away. Hold your ground. The Skinwalker was climbing the tower, defying the laws of physics. It wasn't using the stairs. It was clinging directly to the metal pole, climbing upward as if there were no gravity. Torres fired down at it. The bullets from his M4 struck the creature, but had no effect. The entity continued climbing, as if the bullets were made of plastic. The bullets aren't working. This thing isn't normal. Torres tried to remember the Navajo prayer his grandfather had taught him. Help me, help me. But fear prevented the words from forming in his mind. When the Skinwalker reached the platform of the watchtower, there were only 3 meters between him and Torres. From this close distance, the creature's terrifying appearance became even clearer. It was half human, half animal, but it was unclear what kind of animal. It was constantly changing. Now it had dog claws. Then deer antlers appeared, then eagle wings, and it spoke. In Torres' voice, "Hello, Miguel. Did your grandfather tell you about me?" Torres aimed his rifle. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" The creature's voice now sounded like that of Grandfather Joseph. "I'm just trying to get home, Miguel." "You're not Navajo. You're just imitating them." The entity laughed with Torres's own laughter, but deeper and more terrifying. "Miguel, I am older than the Navajo. I was here before these lands existed." As the Skinwalker approached Torres, he revealed the terrifying truth. These lands are sacred, Miguel, but not just for the good spirits. We, the Dark Ones, also lived here. In 1942, the white soldiers came here. They put up fences. They brought big machines. They drove us off our lands. The entity's form changed. Now he looked like an old Navajo medicine man, but his eyes were still glowing. I am the owner of this place, Miguel, and those soldier brothers of yours, they are all uninvited guests. Torres's blood ran cold. You lived here. I live. I lived. I will live. Time works differently for us. As the sirens of the emergency response team grew closer, the Skinwalker's behavior changed. Ah, your friends are coming, Miguel. I'd like to meet them too. The entity walked to the edge of the watchtower. Below, the QRT team of 4 soldiers approached the tower with their M4s at the ready. Tower 7, QRT here. Give me a status report. Torres grabbed his radio. The entity is in the tower. I fired, but the bullets aren't working. Don't approach. But QRT leader Sergeant Williams couldn't hear him because Skinwalker was mimicking his voice over the radio. QRT, Tower 7. False alarm. It's just a wild boar. You can stand down. Tower 7, copy that. QRT team standing down. Torres screamed in horror. No, that's not me. Come back. Help me. But the QRT team was moving further away. After the QRT team left, Torres was alone with Skinwalker. The entity was now much closer to Torres. He could feel its breath, but it wasn't a normal breath. It was very cold and smelled like rotten flesh. Now, Miguel, you and I can talk. What do you want from me? I want nothing from you. You will simply deliver my message. The Skinwalker's hands touched Torres's shoulders. The land before the Navajo camp came to life in Torres's mind. Sacred lands where sacred people had lived for thousands of years, and the places where healers gathered their power. And then, the invasion. Military machines, buildings, and the destruction of sacred circles. These lands were ours, Miguel, and we want them back. Torres saw the horrific truth in the images coming from Skinwalker's mind. The soldiers missing from Camp Navajo. Over the past 5 years, 12 soldiers had been reported as accidental deaths. But the truth was very different. The Skinwalker had taken them all. Torres asked, "Where are they?" "Those soldiers are with me and safe. They have taken on the role of protectors of my lands." Torres considered a terrifying possibility. Have they become like you?" Skinwalker laughed. "No, Miguel. They were given a choice. To die or to serve. They all chose to serve." Skinwalker offered Torres the same choice. "Miguel, you carry Navajo blood. That makes you different from the others. I am offering you the real choice." "What kind of choice?" "Like the other soldiers, You can work for me, or you can share my power." Torres' blood ran cold. "You want to make me a Skinwalker too? You will be the protector of these lands. Imagine eternal power and eternal life. And I offer you the chance for revenge." Skinwalker showed Torres the commanders in charge of Camp Navajo. He showed him the soldiers who had defiled and invaded these sacred lands. "You can punish them, Miguel. You can bring justice." Torres experienced a deep conflict. On the one hand, Skinwalker's words made sense to him. These lands were truly sacred, and the military base was defiling and damaging them. On the other hand, his grandfather's teachings echoed in his mind. "Miguel, he who sacrifices his soul for power is no longer human. How much time do I need?" "There is no time, Miguel. Choose now or become like the others." Torres looked at his M4. He knew the bullets wouldn't work. But maybe... He remembered the Navajo prayer his grandfather had taught him. As Torres began to recite the Navajo prayer, a sudden change occurred in the Skinwalker. "No, those words." The entity moved away from Torres. It was as if the prayer was causing it physical pain. Torres continued reciting the protective prayer he had learned from his grandfather. With each word, the Skinwalker grew weaker. "Stop. These words are hurting me, burning me." When Torres recited the final part of the prayer, the Skinwalker let out a terrifying scream. The Navajo protective prayer forced the Skinwalker to retreat. "This isn't over, Miguel. I'm still here. This land is mine." The entity jumped down from the watchtower, but it didn't land normally. It seemed to float, slowly descending to the ground. And then it transformed into a four-legged wolf. When Torres looked one last time, the giant wolf was running toward the camp's perimeter. But it wasn't a normal wolf's run. It was different. It was trying to walk like a human, as if planning where to go. Torres grabbed his radio and called base. "Base, Tower 7. I've neutralized the enemy. He's not here anymore. He's retreated." "Tower 7, how did you neutralize the enemy?" "QRT, you were the one who gave the retreat order." Torres paused. He hadn't given that order. Skinwalker had. But how could he explain that to them? "Base, it's a long story. I'll report the details in the morning." "Tower 7, complete your shift and return." During the morning shift change, Torres prepared his incident report. But he couldn't write the truth. He couldn't report, "I encountered Skinwalker." Instead, he wrote in the reports, "Wild pigs trespassed on the site. I took the necessary action and eliminated them. Mission accomplished." James Peterson, who reviewed Torres's report, asked after reading it, "Mike, is everything okay? You look pale." "I'm fine, James. The night was just long and tiring." But James noticed the fear in Torres's eyes. "Torres, what really happened there?" Torres considered telling the truth for a moment, but who would believe him or what he had experienced? 3 days later, Torres called his grandfather, Joseph. "Grandpa, those prayers, were they real?" Miguel, why are you asking? Because I had to use them. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Miguel, did you use them against him? Yes, Grandpa. He came to me while I was on duty and talked to me. My God, are you okay? For now, yes. But he's still there. He's been wandering around the camp. Joseph's voice grew serious. Miguel, you need to leave. Leave right now. Why, Grandpa? Because he knows you now. And Skinwalkers, they never give up. In the weeks that followed, the number of strange occurrences at Camp Navajo increased. Soldiers on night duty began hearing strange noises, animal sounds, but like human voices. 3 soldiers disappeared in the hot desert soil. The QRT team found them, but they were all in shock. They couldn't remember what had happened. Torres was monitoring the situation. The Skinwalker's words were true. These events weren't over, and they didn't seem like they were going to end anytime soon. Torres requested a transfer to another location from the commanding officer. Specialist Torres, why do you want to be transferred? You're successful in your duties and a good soldier. I'm curious about the reason. Personal reason, sir. My family. Torres, we need you here. You can't go anywhere. Your transfer request has been denied. That night, Torres called his grandfather again. Grandfather, they didn't grant my transfer. What should I do? Miguel, I will send you the protective object. The object I send you will protect you from them. It was passed down to me from my grandfather's grandfather, who was a healer. This object belonged to him. Will that object help me? I don't know, Miguel, but at least you'll feel like you're being watched over. Joseph sent Torres a Navajo protective pouch. Inside were precious stones, feathers, and small pieces of paper with ancient Navajo prayers written on them. Torres began carrying the pouch on his chest, and he truly noticed a difference. During night shifts, he no longer saw those glowing eyes. The strange sounds diminished. It was as if the protective pouch was keeping the Skinwalker at bay. Torres's final night at Camp Navajo marked the moment of his final encounter. During his night watch, a familiar voice came over the radio. His own voice. Miguel, you won. This time. Who are you? Where are you? I am still here, but you are now strong. Will you come back? If you lose the protection, I'll come. I'll always wait. The voice cut off. Torres looked around the camp one last time. There was nothing to be seen. Torres's transfer order finally arrived. He was assigned to Colorado. As he left the camp, he saw the old Navajo man at the store one last time. Are you the one who survived the camp? How did you know? Because you're still alive, and there's no fear in your eyes. The old man gave Torres a small precious stone. This is a protection stone. Keep it with you always. After Torres left, strange events continued at Camp Navajo. In 2021, 2 more soldiers were reported missing. In 2022, night shifts were reduced. In 2023, parts of the camp were closed for training purposes. But the real reason was different. The Skinwalker was still there. Torres now lives safely in Colorado, but every night before going to sleep, he checks his protective stone, because he never forgets his grandfather's last words. Miguel, they never forget. And if they find your weak moment, they'll come back. This story is inspired by the Navajo belief in the Skinwalker, but it must not be forgotten. For the Navajo people, this is not just a story. It is a real belief system. Do you think Torres's experience could be real? Is there room for ancient beliefs in the modern world? And most importantly, could structures built on sacred lands truly disturb ancient powers? This story was written with respect for Navajo culture and the Skinwalker belief. It does not intend to harm the sacred values of the Navajo people. On the contrary, it seeks to honor their cultural richness and ancient wisdom. Learning more about true Navajo traditions is the best way to show respect for this culture. Some lands are sacred. Some powers have slept for centuries. But when they are awakened, no technology, no weapon can stop them. Only ancient wisdom and protective prayers will keep you safe from the darkness. Whatever you do, may God be with you.